Okay, we're going to learn simplifying radicals. So let's see question 1. Let me get my pencil. Let's see question 1. So what does this square root of 75 mean? Let's see this equals to a letter. Okay, let's use let's use A to represent. Okay, we don't really know this number, square root of 75. So we just assign it to be A. And the meaning of this is A squared equals to 75. Okay, some number squared. Or even better, A times A. Okay, A multiplied by A squared equals to 75. Okay, so square root of 75 is a number. It's a number. Okay, when they multiply by itself, it equals to 75. What does that mean? That means if I have, so this is square root of 75. If I multiply by itself, I multiply by square root of 75. Remember, a number multiplied by itself, just a square, you square a number, right? So I square this number. Then that equals to A squared. What is that? Square root cancel each other, because this is called index is 2. Square root means index is 2. We call this 0 number on the left corner, top corner, index. Index. And of course, this 2, A squared, that's called exponent. Okay. So this is how we call them. So this square is called exponent or power. Some people call power. Raised to P-O-W-E-R. Sometimes we see A raised by 2. A raised by 2. There are many different ways to call it. Okay, but this 2 is exponent of A. And the other 2 we call index. So here we call index. So square root of 75 is a number. And what kind of number? It's called an irrational number. Irrational. So what does irrational mean? Irrational means something, doesn't totally make sense to human brains yet. Right? So irrational versus rational. And rational numbers we know. Well, let's think about rational numbers. Let's see how many you can remember. Right? Fractions are rational numbers. Let's see, 1/2. 1/2 means 1 apple shared by 2 people. So our brain can totally make sense of that. So it's a rational number. Integers, right? 2 is an integer. What's 2? 2 people, 2 apples. So 2 totally makes sense to our brain. So integers are rational. And negative numbers, what's -5? What could the -5 mean? Or maybe I spend $5 today, right? If I have a balanced work, I want to write down my income and my expenses. My income will be positive, but my expenses I can record as a negative number, right? So negative numbers make sense to us. But these irrational numbers, does not totally, we cannot totally make sense of them yet. But what do? We just keep as they are. Square root of 75, maybe we can simplify. Right? But if we go further, talk about smaller one, right? Let's think about the square root of 0, which means a number squared to be 0, that can only be 0. Right? A square root of 1, which means a number squared to be 1. Which number squared to be 1? Positive 1. Plus or minus 1, right? Positive 1 squared equals to 1. Negative 1 squared also equals to 1, because negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. What about square root 2? No one on earth knows exactly what square root 2 is. So keep as it is. Just square root of 2 is an irrational number. If we press into calculator, the number is in between 1 and 2. It's about 1.414. Then if you get a better calculator, more expensive calculator, that give you more decimal digits. So the digits never ends if you want to compute square root of 2. You will keep going. The numbers, the digits after the decimal point, it just keeps going. There's no pattern. It doesn't repeat. There's no pattern. But if a decimal number has repeating patterns, and it can be written as a fraction, then fraction we know is a rational number. So irrational numbers cannot be written as a fraction. A fraction means the numerator is an integer, the denominator is also an integer, like a half. I have 1 in the numerator is an integer. 2 in the denominator is also an integer. So irrational numbers, so this is square root 2. These radical numbers belongs to irrational numbers family. There are other irrational numbers, a famous one like a pi, like an Euler number. But now we know, so those radical numbers in the irrational number family. So square root 75 can be simplified. How? Because 75 equals to 25 multiplied by 3. And 25 can be written as a square. 25 is 5 times 5. Or 5 squared. So 75 is 5 squared times 3. If we square root of 75, right? So square root is an operation, like a plus, minus, multiply, divide operation. So square root is also an operation. And we know square root of 25, right? 5 squared. Square and this index cancel each other. 2 over 2 is 1. So this becomes 5 square root of 75 becomes 5 square root of 2. So square root of 75 is related with the square root of 2. It's 5 times as bigger. So square root of 75 is 5 times square root of 2. Now let's see 2. We know square root of 16 is 4. Why? Because 16 is 4 squared. 16 is 4 times 4 is 4 squared. Then when we square root 16, we square root, square and square root are opposite operations, like a plus and minus. If we do 1 plus 2 minus 2, we still get 1 back. Right? Or like multiplication and division. If we have a number, multiply by 2, then we divide by 2, we still get the same number. Right? Because plus and minus, multiplication and division are opposite operations. They undo each other. So square and square root, let me write down those two words. Square and square root. Okay, square means we put 2 above a number, right? Like a 4 square. Or square root is this radical sign. Why is a square root? Because there's a little 2 here. The index is 2 by default. So square and square root undo each other. So we get a 4. So square root of 16 is a 4. So for the same reason, you probably already know for 3, what's 3? 3 equals to 6. Right? Because 6 squared is 36. Same reason for 4. Tell me what's 4? Yes, 8. Because 8 squared is 64. Now let's look at a 5. 80 can be written as, so 80 equals to 16 times 5, right? And 16 is a 4 squared. So if I square root, I put a square root over 80. It's the same as putting square root over this, same as putting square root over this. So square root of 4 squared, that's just a 4. Right? But 5 still under the square root sign. So square root of 80 simplified to be 4 square root of 5 or 4 radical 5. 4 radical 5. Okay, so square root of 80 is 5 times bigger of radical 5. Well, let's see 30. 30 can be written as 5 times 6. 30 is 5 times 6. And 5 is a prime. And 6 can be written as 2 times 3. So there's no, if we square root of 30, it's the same as the square root of 5 times 2 times 3. We don't have squares inside. 5 is a prime, 2 is a prime, 3 is a prime. So this is prime factorization. It cannot be, it doesn't have more factors. So that means 5 is different from 2, 2 is different from 3. They're all different. There's no number squared. So which is keep as it is. So square root of 30, just square root of 30 is an irrational number. We'll keep as it is. Okay, I'm going to erase this one. Then go to the next. Let's see those numbers. Let's think about 8. So 8 equals to 4 times 2. And 4 is 2 squared. Right? 4 is 2 squared. So when we square root, of a, that's the same as the square root of 4 and 2. or square root of 2 squared times 2. Square root of 2 squared, just 2. And then we still have these 2 inside the square root. So square root of 8 is related with the square root of 2. And the square root of 8 is 2 times bigger, 2 times square root of 2. Same thing for 18. Now maybe you already seen a pattern, right? So 18 is, I'm writing 19. 18 equals to 9, which is a 3 squared times 2. So when we square root of 18, is the same as the square root of 3 squared times 2. Or square root, square cancel each other. So 3 square root, we just get 3. But it will still have radical 2 there, right? Because this 2 stays inside the radical sign. All right. So square root of 18 is a 3 radical 2. Now we see the connections between square root of a and square root of 18, right? Because square root of a is 2 radical 2. Square root of 18 is a 3 radical 2. Let's see 32. If you can do faster, you can leave in the chat to tell me what is your answer. So 32 is 16 times 2, which is 4 squared times 2. It's also related with the square root of 2. Right? So if I square root, what do I get? Square root of 4 squared is 4. Then we still have 2 and the square root sign, these 2, right? So square root of 32 is 4 radical 2. Wow, now you see square root of a, square root of 32, square root of 18. Even we don't know exactly what they are, but we know they are all related with the square root of 2. Or they are all multiples of square root of 2. Now let's see square root of 12. 12 can be written as 4 times 3. 4 is 2 squared times 3. When we square root of 2 squared becomes 2. But then this 3 is still under the square root sign. So square root 12 is related with the square root of 3, or radical 3. Square root of 12 is 2 times radical 3. Why this has a again? It's the same as before. Square root of a is 2 radical 2. Excuse me. Let's see 12. 12, we have this number 108. So how do we figure out the factors of 108? 108. We use this short division. Okay, let's call it a short division versus long division. All right, versus a long division. First, we see 108 is an even number, so we can divide by 2. If we divide by 2, the quotient becomes 2 times 5 is 10. Right? Then 4, 2 times 4 is 8. So the quotient is 54. Then 54, we see also is an even number. Right? We divide by 2 again. We divide by 2 again. When we divide by 2, what do we get? We get a 27. Right? 27 is easy to see it. 27 is the 3 cube. So we write 118 as, let me write down a little bit lower. So 100OA equals to 2 squared times 3 squared times 3. Why we want to write in square term? Because square cancels square root. That's why we're trying to put everything in squares. So we have 2 square, we have 3 square. That means we have 6 square. 6 square root, so we have 6. What's left inside the radical sign? Square root of 3. So square root of 100OA is related with the square root of 12. Square root of 12 is 2 radical 3. Square root of 108 is 6 radical 3. That means we can add square root of 12 and square root of 108. Right? If we add, we have 2 radical 3 plus 6 radical 3, that's 8 radical 3. Same reason we can add square root of a with square root of 12. That's a 6 radical 2. Right? Similarly for square root of 18. And then this is called like radicals. So when two numbers have like radicals, we can combine them. Just like when we combine like terms, we have x plus 2x get 3x. So same way, we can think irrational numbers, right? Square root 2 plus 2 square root 2, that's a 3 square root of 2. Right? Because square root 2 is a common factor of those two. So when we combine radicals, we will be looking for like radicals. Like radicals means the index are the same, and the radicand, so inside is called, under the square root sign is called a radicand. The radicands are the same, the index are the same. You see in this, 2 square root 2 and 4 square root 2 are like radicals. So which means square root of a and square root of 32 are like radicals. Why? Because square root of a is 2 radical 2. Square root of 32 is 4 radical 2. If we want to add those two numbers, we get a 6 radical 2. Okay, let's moving ahead. Okay, let's finish this couple of, simplify this couple of radicals. Then we'll take a break. So 125 can be written as 25 times 5, which is 5 squared times 5. Right? So when I square root 125, I get square root of 5 squared times 5. Now 5 square root, it becomes 5. I still have another 5 under the square root sign. This 5 still under square root sign. So square root of 125 equals to 5 times square root of 5. Okay, square root of 125 is related with the square root of 5. Let's see 50. Square root of 50. 50 can be written as 25 times 2, which is 5 squared times 2. When we square root of 5 squared, we get a 5. So this has become a 5 radical 2. Because the 2 still stays under the radical sign. You see this 2 still stays under radical sign. So square root of 50 is 5 times radical 2. So it's related with radical 2. Let's see 175, square root of 175. We do the same thing, looking for square factors in 175. Well, if we divide by 5, what do we get? 5 times 3, 15, so we get 35. And 35 is 5 times 7, which means 5 squared times 7. 25 times 7 is 175, or 5 squared times 7 is 175. So now we want to put it under square root. So again, 5 square root just becomes 5, but the 7 stays inside the square root. Let's see, 16. 28 is 4 times 7, right? So we know this is 2 radical 7. So square root of 28 is related with radical 7. We're in the radical 7 family. Square root of 45 is 5 times 9. Square root of 5 times 9. That's a 3 radical 5. Okay. So square root of 45 is in the same family as the square root of 125, right? Because they have like radicals. And the 15 and 16 are like radicals because they have square root of 7, right? If we add those two numbers, if we add square root of 175 with the square root of 28, we will get a 7 radical 7. If we add the square root of 125 with square root of 45, we will get an 8 radical 5, because this is the 5 radical 5, this is 3 radical 5. Add them together, it's 8 radical 5. Well, 18 probably is obvious for you now. 72 is 36 times 2. Square root 36 is 6 squared. Square root of 6 squared, so it becomes 6. But we still have radical 2. So square root of 72 in the radical 2 family. Okay. All right, so today we just do this much, okay, for this one.